What's up guys, Brad here from Piney Grove, and today we will not be on a tractor. We did a lot of tractoring this week. We got the driveway put in, now the cars are in the garage. We did our mowing last night, but today I've started a project that is near and dear to my heart. So with Dad passing 18 months ago, we have a lot of things that he made with his hands, and we've incorporated a little bit of that into our new house with our furniture, because he liked to make furniture, he liked to work with wood. Actually, in the house that we moved him into a couple years, well, 3 years ago, the table that's in there was refinished by him, and it's the table that I grew up eating at. My dad was a union carpenter on Long Island, New York. So that's a big deal. I don't really know what that means, but I know he was pretty proud of that. He was a union card holding carpenter. Then he went into business with for himself with a lumber yard, and then when he moved all of us from New York to Virginia to our 200-acre farm, he had a construction business as well. So although he was big into farming, his dad was a farmer, he was also big into woodworking, and he was a very detail-oriented guy. So what I'm going to do is preserve all of that detail. This cabinet he built by hand. It looks like it's made out of pine. He cut it, he fitted it. I'm not a great big woodworker, so I don't know all the different terms, but I know there's been some router use on here. This trim was made by himself. This three-tiered trim looks like some table saw cuts. He always liked the fancy edges to things. He didn't like squared off stuff, so he's got a recessed door opening here with a little bit of ornament detail. He built these shelves in here that fit really nice, and he also routered the edge of them. So I've been sanding on this thing for a while. I took the door off. I want to preserve all the old hardware that was on it. I've got the door pretty much sanded down. So I figure I'm just going to finish the outside. I'm going to make it white, but here's the door, and I've knocked all of that shiny glaze off of it by sanding it. I'm just doing the outside. I'm not going to do the inside. I'll just clean that up a little. But this should be fairly easy to sand. A lot of big straight areas, a little bit of trim work. But I was looking at these shelves. So we've got some of these shelves just really have stuff. They're finished, they're varnished. So they have a varnish on them that I would have to sand off. But they also have a lot of staining. They got some evidence of some rusty cans or something. And I want to preserve, you know, most of the detail of the wood. So I'm just going to run them through the planer just to kind of clean them up a little bit. And that will save me a lot of time right there. Dad always had appreciation for nice lumber, and these are nice wide boards. I think they're pine. They're pretty light, so they're probably pine. The growth rings on them are pretty tight, so this is some older wood, not the newer wood that has the bigger gaps between the growth rings. But as a kid growing up, I mean, wood was wood. Kind of same way it is to me now. I'm not like a connoisseur of wood, but I really am excited to see how these turn out once I get them planed. And I am not a professional woodworker. All I'm trying to do is knock off the finish of everything so that it will hold, primer and also paint. Just want to take that top surface off. I'm going to do both sides, but I just don't want to take too much. And the problem with a plane is that if I just put it on one setting, you got to run the material through all the time. And what I mean by that is once I get this setting for the material, I can't then change it and then do this side, or else all the boards will be different. So I got to do them one at a time. Knowing Dad, he probably ran these through the planer as well, but they had a little bit of cup to them, at least some of them did. So some of them, it took off a lot more wood, and others, it only took it off, say, on this side. But most of the sides came out this clean, and I went ahead at the same setting and ran them through the back side just to see what it would do. And I'm contemplating what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to lower the planer down about 1/16 of an inch. And this was that gross one. This is the one that was all that dark wood. And it's got a little bit of sniping to it, and sniping's where it can't push it with the roller, and then the cutter blade maybe cuts a little bit deeper in one place than the other. But all in all, came out pretty good. All a planer does is make a board flat. It doesn't change the bow of the board. It'll just take a cupped board and knock off the edges of the cup, like this one, this side must have been higher than this side. This must have been a low side on the board. Here's an example of a board being higher in the center where it only hit this because these edges were lower, so it knocked that off, and it's probably cupped a little where it's cupped that way. We'll go down a 32nd. That's good enough. I'll show you how well these fit in here and what they look like when they're in here. And they already look better now that they've got a lot of that dirt and can rings and stuff off of them. I'm going to do a quick sand on these because when I paint them, I'll let the paint dry and then sand and put another coat on. So I don't have to get all my sanding done in one pass, I guess. All the shelf boards are done. They're sanded and they're ready for the final finish. The bottom floor is sanded. I tried to clean up where that dirty shelf was there a little bit. Have to do a little bit more there. But now what I got to do is all the sides. Pretty sure it's white pine. You can see we got some staining in the grain here. You know, natural knots and stuff. And I don't know how he joined it together. Probably with biscuits or something. But I talked to Deb about if we go completely white with everything, whether we would do the distressed look where you knock off some of the white, like with a sandpaper or whatever on the corners. And she felt like we either go white with it or we leave it like what it is and like revarnish it. It's like much lighter without the shelves and the door on it. Now I can do this side and then I'll just keep turning it over and doing all the sides. But this has been, I won't say it's easy, because stripping down furniture is never fun, but I'm using just a simple sander, vibration sander. I've always had one of these all my life. This is probably my second one. Got 10 years or so. It's just a simple Makita quarter sheet, and some of these sheets are probably 20 years old that I bought. I had a stash of them. But these large surfaces go quick, and I'm using 80 grit paper, and that should be fine for primer, and then I'll sand it with 220 or something after that. But I can just shoot down these big sections here. I put a new piece of paper on here just for the cabinet, and it's going really quick. All right, guys, I've been busy this morning running around getting some primer, and I went to our local Benjamin Moore paint dealer right down the road here. I don't even think I realized it was there. And they recommended Prime Lock Plus. This is what it looks like. So I was looking up primers last night, and you got Kills and you got Bins, 1, 2, 3, and just all these very popular primers. But what he said was this was probably a petroleum-based shellac on here, an enamel, or basically not water-based. And he felt that this right here being, I think it's an enamel-based primer. This says alkyd resin-based, but basically petroleum-based primer on there. And he said then anything should stick to this primer. So I decided to do that because I got so much work involved in it at this point, and this wasn't that expensive. I said, man, I don't want to spend $100 on primer. And he goes, no, it isn't that much. And I think it was 20 bucks. And he also said that whenever you're using a enamel-based paint as opposed to latex, the water cleanup paint, to use synthetic China bristle. And I'd never heard of that, but he said these won't pull out of the brush, whereas a normal natural hair type of brush or something, this enamel-based primer would pull the hairs out of the brush. Again, I'm no paint expert. I just went in there and asked the experts questions. Everything I read about these type of primers is that they are very thin. So I've taped everything off that I don't want to get primer on. We're going to do white outside. And then we decided the trim on the top and the bottom, which I've sanded down, which I probably didn't need to. I could have just cleaned it off. We're going to restain that and maybe put a clear coat on it so it'll be white. It'll have some contrast to it. So everything will be white. You'll open it up. It'll be wood grain. And then the top and the bottom will be wood grain. But whenever you're taking paint out, it'll get in this rim right here where the top seals. So what my dad showed me, and I've done it ever since, is I'll take a screwdriver and I'll poke a couple holes there. You just turn the screwdriver at a little bit of an angle. And that way any paint that gets in this little groove right here can run back into the can and it'll seal better. Maybe everybody knows that. I just thought I'd mention it since I'm painting. Painting is one of those things that it's like 90% prep, and then the actual painting doesn't take that long. Spend more time waiting for things to dry to put the various coats on. Looks like that's drying quick. Well, there's a roller. I don't know that I should have used a roller. It's kind of putting a texture to it. I don't think that's what I wanted. So I'm going to sand it, but I still think that that roller would have left it just way too rough. Maybe if I had a foam roller. Okay, if you want some pointers, number one, be ready. Because this stuff dries really quick. Like as you're working with it, you can feel it tightening up. Number two, it drips a lot, so make sure you got everything taped up. I got cardboard down here at the bottom. I got tape. I got a drop cloth. I mean, I'm not trying to slop paint, but I am slopping paint. I think this stuff is going to be really good as far as preparing the surface to take other paint. But man, it is hard to work with. Like you spread it like that, and it doesn't. You just feel it drying. You feel it drying as you're spreading it. When you try to go back over it, like if there's say a dark stain in the wood or something, then it's hard to get more paint to go over top of where you've already been. So I taped the bottom side of this door so this paint that I'm putting on the edges doesn't wrap around to the inside. See, this is the door, and I'm doing the best I can to get it as smooth and flat as possible to minimize sanding, but there's brush strokes in it and, you know, high spots and low spots because this paint isn't like self-leveling paint or this primer. It just, you plop a bunch of it down and it's like that's where it's going to be. And by the time you get around to spreading it, it's already, you know, made a little mountain there. Day 3 of refinishing this cabinet. And guys, I don't know, the primer I used, it felt like it was going on correctly. It felt really sticky going on. And yesterday I put the sander on it after a few hours, and I had 100 grit sandpaper. It was kind of rolling the primer off, so I recoated a little bit of the areas that I hit with the sander, and I put fans on it yesterday. I got fans on it now. It's out in the sun. I had it baking in the sun yesterday, but I'm not as impressed with that primer as I was initially. So that door there is very important. That paint sticks to it. I don't want to strip it down again, so we're gonna go with 220 grit sandpaper and sand it lightly before we put the final finish on it. So we had two ways we could have went with the shelves. This is them after they got planed. We could have left them like this. We could have clear coated them, but I took one and I put some of this Olympic Elite cedar stain on it. I had leftover from another project. So this is it without stain, and this is it with stain. And we really like it. We like the finish, and we're not going to varnish it or anything or put a clear coat on it. It's nice and smooth from sanding. We're just going to rub in some stain and call it a day on them. So while everything's outside still drying, I'm going to knock this out real quick. So this has been the most fun and fulfilling part of this project so far. Now planing them is pretty fun, but this is just kind of changes the look of the board, brings out the natural grains, and it's real easy to do. Applying stain with a rag is one of the easiest things you can do to transform a board. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit of anxiety about doing this because, like I said last night, I used 100 grit and it started rolling the primer off, like right down to the varnish underneath. But I've given it plenty of time to dry. I'm gonna be using 240 grit sandpaper, and I'm not gonna try and like bear down on it. All I wanna do is get these brush strokes out. And I've gotta get these primer brush strokes out, or else it's gonna look awful with the white coating. It's gonna look like a child painted it. Got everything sanded down and brought inside the shop here where it's like an oven. It's so hot in here, but I don't want the dust swirling around and getting on this stuff. But what I have is something called Cabinet Rescue. But we've used this before. When Deb and I met, she had her own house, and we redid her cabinets with this, and it came out great. It came out like new cabinets, and they've got like a hard finish to them. So hoping that this comes out the same. It's a pretty thin paint, so it kind of spreads out. It's kind of self-leveling. I'm only going to do like top surfaces and then let them dry and turn them over. So I can do 2 top surfaces and then come back and turn the cabinet over and do another surface when it's up. One thing I noticed when I was sanding was that this wood has a lot of imperfections in it that you couldn't see when it had stain and varnish on it. When you applied the primer to it, and you could really see those imperfections in the primer. So I think I'm gonna see quite a few imperfections once we get it painted white here. I don't know if you can see from that angle, but the roller is putting like little dots all over it, like little tiny air bubbles. But then when you leave it like closer to the camera, those bubbles kind of subside. So I think it's going to come out to be like a nice finish. Dad made this. I was thinking, well, maybe he was blind for the latter years of his life. I would say the last he died at 85, so probably 45 years or so of his life he was blind. He could see a little bit, he could see shadows, but me and my good friend say he's in a workshop in the sky and God has given him his eyesight back. And I was thinking as I was doing this, is he looking down on me going, "Oh, you're doing a good job there, Brad. You know, you're thanks for continuing my legacy with my woodworking," or is he thinking, "I can't believe you covered up all that beautiful wood"? I'm going to let that dry, see how it looks, and see if it needs another coat or not. But I think that looks pretty good right there. Just hope it all sticks. I'm going to do the cabinet, like do this flat surface, let it dry, then turn it and do another flat surface. I'm not going to do anything vertical. I think it would have come out smooth with the brush. The more I use it, the more I get used to working with the paint. I think if I had used the brush and was real careful with my overlap of my brush strokes, I think it would have self-leveled and gave me like a perfectly smooth finish like a refrigerator. Trying to do consistent all the way down, same pressure. Keep those lines straight, just like the grains of the wood. Hopefully it all blends in. Okay guys, I've been working for several days on this. I haven't filmed anything. But let me tell you what I've been doing and give you some tips on this process that I've learned along the way. So this is what it looks like now. We've got the shelves over there that have been stained with the cedar stain. And I had taped off all of this really dark trim here that I had sanded down. What I did was I grabbed some of that same cedar stain where this was all sanded and stained it, and it gives it like a modern look, like more of a satin finish rather than the shiny finish that was on it. You can see how dark that was. Dad had stained it really dark, and there's a good contrast. So there's Dad's color and there's the color it is now. To me, it looks perfect. I just stained it a few minutes ago, and I was really shocked with how good it looked and how much I liked it. So over here we have the door. I've temporarily, or I've put the hinges and stuff on and the latch, but it's on loose. I've got these screws loose. This was painted this morning. It got its 3rd coat of paint. The sides have 2 coats of paint. The front here has 3 coats, and then this side has 2 coats. And so this Cabinet Rescue, it is a really good product. So it flows really good, but that has its drawbacks. And the drawbacks is that you don't want to do anything vertical. There's a couple little places where I did vertical painting in here just while it was sitting on its side. And I was like, oh, I'll go in here and catch this little spot. Anytime I did anything vertical, it wanted to run. So it is a great surface coating or paint or whatever you want to call it for flat surfaces where it can self-level. So I had all those brush strokes in the primer, and I sanded them out, but I couldn't get them all sanded out. So my first layer of Cabinet Rescue would fill in those brush strokes, and then I'd let it dry overnight, and then I'd sand it with 220 grit sandpaper with my vibration sander, and I filled in all of those primer brush strokes. So it's pretty smooth, except for maybe where there's some planer marks or something from the original wood. So I had this cabinet turned over, I'd paint it, I'd come back 4 hours, turn it over, paint another side. So like every 4 hours, I was coming out here and moving this cabinet to give me a flat surface. I had it laying on its side so that the paint would self-level. And when it's on that flat surface like that, you won't get runs unless you were to put too much paint on the edge, and then it would roll over the side a little bit. But I try to do this front with a paintbrush and just try and get it really, really smooth so I wouldn't get any of those bubbles from the roller. And what I found was, you got to keep a wet edge with this stuff. And even though you have a decent amount of work time with it, I would find if I was doing that long stretch there, by the time I got halfway done with it, it had dried already. And if I went back to, say, up here and try to fix a spot, it had already started to cure a little bit, and then it would leave brush strokes. So definitely roller is the way to go. If you have a flat surface like that door over there, you could possibly use a brush and put it on kind of thick and let it self-level. Then you get a really, really flat finish. But I think a high density or a dense foam roller is the way to go, and that's what I saw in the comments online as well. Besides wait for this to all cure so that I can put the door on tomorrow, the last thing I have to do is stain this bottom. I sanded it with a very heavy grit sandpaper. I'm just going to come in here with that cedar stain and just try to match what I got going on out here on this trim. Now this stain isn't going to do much because there's not many open pores in this wood. Kind of just smearing around, to be honest with you. But it'll cover it up a little bit, and at least I won't have that white sheen from the sanding. All right, guys, it's been drying overnight, and now it's time for the big reveal. So we got 3 coats here on the front, and I've got the door on. Everything fits perfectly. Got this old-timey latch that Dad put on here back on. And there it is. We got modern white on the outside. We've got the trim modernized with taking off that glossy dark finish and putting that cedar finish on it. And all the shelves have been planed down, and they also have a cedar finish on them. And now it's time to put it in its final resting place. That's so smooth right there. So you push that button and it pulls that back. And then it's got the striker right here so that it doesn't hit the wood. And you just push it and it closes. Bigger than you thought. Want to pull the car in and see how it fits, or? We got Dad's custom-made cabinet, refinished, modernized, and in the garage. And that's been a project that's been weighing on my mind for a long time because I knew it would take longer than I wanted it to, and I wanted to do it justice, and I think we did. It's going to live in our garage forever and remind us of Dad every time we open it. But that's going to wrap it up. So until next time, y'all take care out there, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye, y'all.